they have to be done with Arkansas Works, a homegrown program like Gabe's program or Razor Coaches, or with the existing high school counselors. These are certainly things that have to be done for students, certainly first-generation college students. And Reed, I'm going to hand it over to you.
Good morning and welcome to the conference. We are very much aware that we're between you and lunch, which is always a dangerous place to be, but want to again welcome you here for this morning. As a member of the faculty of the University of Arkansas, it's a pleasure to be a part of the group here at the Office of Education Policy. It's good to see a whole bunch of old friends in the audience that have been at this business. We do want to clearly communicate to you that we feel you're valuable partners in this whole education operation. I have been in the workforce some 60 years, and I'm transitioning out. So for those of you in the audience who can help me figure out what to do as a post-workforce participant, please let me know after the program is over. I'd appreciate your help in that. We have three outstanding panelists today, and I could spend the whole time that we have telling you about what they've done and their credentials and so forth. But we're going to make that fairly brief so that we can spend most of our time on some key questions that I think you'll be interested in. Our first panelist is Randy Zook, who is President and CEO of the Arkansas Chamber of Commerce and Associated Industries of Arkansas. He's immediately to my right. His experience includes working for the Arkansas Economic Development Commission and the Atlantic Company of Atlanta. He serves on the boards of the KIPP schools in Helena and Junior Achievement of Arkansas. So he's very much involved in public education in a big way. So welcome, Randy. Mary Ann Shope, next, is Vice President for Learning at Pulaski Technical College. Following her graduate studies at George Peabody at Vanderbilt University, she taught at Frostburg State University and Thomas More College and directed the Workplace Skills Enhancement Program at UALR. Following that, she served as Dean at Northwest Community College and then on to the University of Arkansas Medical Sciences Northwest, and now has joined the Pulaski Tech in 2007 and in her current position in 2012. And welcome, Mary Ann. Warwick Sabin is the Executive Director of the Arkansas Regional Innovation Hub and is an Arkansas State Representative, so be on your best behavior. He's in the legislature. He is a graduate of the University of Arkansas at Fayetteville, where he served as student body president, earned an MA from Oxford while they're on a Marshall Scholarship. His experience includes service for United States Representative Marion Berry and at the Clinton Foundation. Welcome, Warwick. I knew Warwick when he was a freshman, I think, at the University of Arkansas. I knew Mary Ann when she was in Northwest Arkansas. I've gotten acquainted with Randy now as a result of my wife's involvement in the Economic Development Commission. I'm going to direct a question to each of the panelists, and then we'll open it up for some broader questions. And fortunately, you have the questions on the screen, so you can follow along. I'm also going to ask you, as we do our students at the university, if you have electronic equipment in front of you or in your pocket, we're assuming you're making notes from these presentations, not staying in touch with your office or trying to find out what we're going to do this afternoon, those kinds of things. So for that, it would be good to pay attention to these three people because they have a lot to offer to you. First of all, Randy, you have stated that Arkansas needs improvement in the areas of vocational and technical education. What does that look like in high school and at the college level?
Thank you, Reed. Let's use this one. We're approaching a crisis in certain sectors of the economy in Arkansas, and let me hasten to add that this is not just an Arkansas challenge. This is a national challenge. Our workforce, as we know, as Reed and I are living, is aging. I'm in that last box on the right when they describe your age. You know, it's 18 to 24 and 24 to 30, whatever. And over on the right, 65 plus. I'm over there on the right, just about to slide off the right side of the page at some point, not too far in the distant future. The workforce is aging. We're losing skills. We have manufacturing plants that cannot fill orders, that cannot take orders. We have construction companies that are behind schedule. We have healthcare institutions that are paying needless added costs and overtime because of inadequate staffs. This is true across the entire economy. This is not just true in manufacturing, although that's what I'm focused on. We literally have thousands of jobs that are unfilled and that businesses are unable to fill because we can't match the people with the skills with the jobs. We've got about 75,000 people drawing unemployment today in Arkansas. We've also got, best I can estimate, is something close to 30,000 unfilled jobs in the economy. What explains the disconnect or the mismatch? It's all about skills. We have allowed our vocational training apparatus or system across the state to atrophy over the last 25 or 30 years. And again, this is not just an Arkansas problem. We've done this nationally. We have, with leadership all across the society and the state and the nation, we have embraced the idea of the need for college degrees. There's no question everybody in this economy needs something beyond high school, but everybody does not need or require or is even interested in a four-year baccalaureate degree. We have, of the STEM sector jobs that will be created over the next 20 years or so, roughly 50% of them will not require a four-year degree. They will, however, require some certification in some skill or some technical program and successful completion of it, but it will require skills more than or in addition to academic training or academic time. So that's the message we're trying to carry, is that there's an enormous gap already exists, and it will only grow more profound and will deepen across the economy as we move forward because of our inadequate dedication of resources for technical and career training at this point. We've got a huge opportunity. The faster we address it, the faster we start running in this direction, the more competitive we'll be with the rest of the country, because other states are figuring this out just as we are.
Thanks very much, Randy. Marianne, is the typical high school path in Arkansas adequately preparing students for community college, and what more could be done?
I want to follow up a little bit of what Randy said to answer this question. My college, Pulaski Technical College, is the largest community college in the state of Arkansas. We have 10,000 students. About a third of those students are on the career path that Randy just talked about, going into technical programs. The other 2/3 are transferring to UALR, UCA, campuses close to home, because most of them want to stay right here in central Arkansas. But the interesting statistic for our 10,000 students is that 96% of them have to be put into what we have called developmental programs at our college. I learned this morning I need to call those accelerated programs. And that makes it really difficult to get students ready for either transferring to a four-year college or, as Randy said, going into those technical areas, those programs where there really are the jobs and the work. There are interesting statistics from the Southern governors back in 2011 when we were just beginning to come out of the recession. They identified those middle skills jobs as jobs that were there all during the recession, that if we had just had the skilled workforce to fill them, that those people would have been recession proof. And looking at the current SREB statistics, it says the same thing, that we have more people than jobs, in the lower skills jobs. We have more people than jobs in the higher skills jobs, but in the middle, we have more jobs than people. And I know at our college, in our technical programs, we have suffered, as Randy has said, with just the lack of attention to those technical programs. We've all been swept away with the idea that everybody has to go to college, and the technical programs have been neglected. But no matter what program people are going into, at our college, we deal with about 96% of our enrollees that really have to work on reading and writing and mathematics just to get into the transfer programs or into the technical programs.
Thanks much, Mary Ann. Warwick, it's your position, you work with Arkansas entrepreneurs. How could our high schools and institutions of higher education, it's really nice, he's put it right on the screen for me, so it's real easy to read, better prepare students to take on an entrepreneurship role?
Well, that's a good question. I think what I'll do is start just by kind of giving you a broad overview of the Innovation Hub, because it's really broader than just working with entrepreneurs. We've created the organization really to try to align all of the assets and resources that we have to support entrepreneurs and small business development in Arkansas. And as many of you are aware, there are efforts like this that are much more mature in other states and metropolitan areas around the country. And we've been a little late in Arkansas in terms of trying to bring all of those things together, prevent them from being siloed, and kind of have them not only work in harmony, but have them be articulated in a way that our own citizens know that they exist, and citizens outside the state of Arkansas know that they exist, so they understand that Arkansas is a great place to come and start a business or grow a business. And so we've spent a lot of time just in the first 9 months of the organization being around to just sort of identifying partners, many of whom are in this room, working with our higher education institutions, our public school districts, charter schools, private schools, the homeschool network, our corporate partners, government agencies, and nonprofit organizations that are all doing really good work in this area. And I think we've made a lot of progress in that regard. And then, once you really kind of understand the landscape, then you want to fill the gaps that exist. And so that's the other sort of proactive role we're trying to take through the Innovation Hub. And the tangible way we're doing that in the short term is that we're building an innovation center in downtown North Little Rock. Some of you may have heard about this, but we're basically taking a lot of the best practices and models that exist around the country and bringing them here to Central Arkansas. And so we're going to have a maker space in that building that's going to provide really high-end, high-technology prototyping equipment and other kinds of tools so that people can actually get access, again, to those resources, not just to prototype their own inventions and run their own businesses, but also to offer education opportunities through our partnerships. And we've also forged a partnership in that area with the Arkansas Science and Technology Authority and the federal agency housed within that authority, which is Advanced Manufacturing Solutions. The second part of the building is actually a STEM classroom and laboratory that we're doing in partnership with the EAST Initiative. And we're bringing EAST's award-winning, nationally recognized programming and pedagogy to a broader audience there in the Innovation Hub. Again, offering education not just to young people, but to adults who need to get that training in computer coding and programming, CAD design, 3D animation, all of these skills that we're lacking here in Arkansas and need to develop. We're also going to have an entrepreneurial and co-working space in there that will bring together a lot of those resources that small business people need to do that. And so I'll kind of stop there because I could talk a lot about just all of that. But to answer the question directly in terms of, how do our high schools and institutions of higher education better prepare students to take on an entrepreneurship role, I think that sort of understanding what it is that we need to do to prepare people to be entrepreneurial. And I think that you all obviously understand that education requires a lot more hands-on learning. It involves exposing students to the kinds of technology and equipment that exist. It means partnering with other organizations that, again, are doing good work and aligning our high schools and our colleges with industry. And this is not a new concept, but our students not only need to be prepared for the jobs that exist, but for the jobs that are going to exist. And they need to understand computer coding and programming and all of those skills that are going to help them, again, not only be prepared for those jobs that are being created, but so that they can create jobs for themselves. And so I certainly hope that through the Innovation Hub, we're able to promote more of that kind of activity and more of those kinds of collaborative partnerships across different institutions of learning, regardless of sort of which cohort they're directed towards.
Thank you very much, Warwick. We're going to move into some questions that each of the panelists will be able to respond to if they would like to. Prior to that, as an academic, I would go away from here in trouble if I didn't give you some numbers. So I'm going to quickly give you some numbers. The civilian labor force in Arkansas as of March this year was about 1.33 million people. Interestingly enough, if you look at the projections for jobs in 2022 across the United States, we're going to need about 1.33 million jobs to be filled with people with associate degrees or higher. It's just kind of an interesting sort of situation. Hopefully, many of those people will stay in Arkansas if they graduate here, or we can recruit people like Warwick came here from New York. Can you imagine the culture shock of an 18-year-old coming here from New York to Fayetteville, Arkansas? But he has managed to thrive in that situation. If you look at the composition of our labor market here in Arkansas, about 20% of the people now work in trade, transportation, and utilities. About 18% work for the government, for a government of some sort. Education and health services, about 15%. And manufacturing, which is one of the things that Randy is responsible for, and we're going to continue to push him in that direction, about 13% of the workforce is in manufacturing. Professional and business services, about 10%. Leisure and hospitality, about 9%. If you take those 5 major categories, it represents about 85% of the workforce in Arkansas. And as Randy said, we have positions that we can't fill because we can't find the talent to do that. That's going to become even more of a problem if we don't address it in a collaborative way. Now, the first question to the panel you'll see on the screen, and any of the panelists that would like to jump in are welcome to do that. What type of jobs will be in demand in the future in Arkansas? And how desirable are these jobs? Who'd like to tackle that? Marianne's got her hand on the microphone.
I'll just start off. How many of you had to turn on your heat in your house today or yesterday because it was cold and you turned it back on? Aren't you glad it worked? We have a heating, ventilation, air conditioning program at Pulaski Tech. We brought 12 of the major HVAC contractors in Central Arkansas to our campus a couple of weeks ago to talk about our program. If you live in Central Arkansas, I'm not going to name names, but you see the trucks of these guys running up and down the streets all the time, and they've probably been in your driveway. This is what they told me, and I had to stop in the middle of the meeting and say, would you please repeat that? They told me that the shortage of people skilled in HVAC was so critical in Central Arkansas, and I believe Randy when he says this is nationwide, that they literally are taking people off the street that they believe will show up to work and can pass a drug test and will give them a modicum of training and send them out to your house to fix your system. And I said, wait. Am I hearing you correctly? Is that who's coming to my house? And they said, yes, ma'am. That scared the daylights out of me. That we're not nearing critical stage, friends. We are at critical stage, and some of the I call them middle skills. That's kind of the national term for that. I visited with Molex. Molex is a large technology. They don't want to be called a manufacturing company because they feel like that'll scare people away from applying for a job there. They have some really great positions that students at Pulaski Tech, if they choose to take some of our theoretical science and mathematics courses and couple that with the applied programs that we have in electronics, electricity, pneumatics, some of those things, they will take them on as technicians at Molex and start them at a reasonable entry-level salary. But if you come to work every day and you're willing to work overtime, within a few years' time, you can be making $60,000 at Molex. And I'm not exaggerating that because I know wage structures have been exaggerated to some degree in some of the what I call trades areas. Again, those jobs are there. Lexicon Steel, Prospect Steel are companies in Central Arkansas. They were on our campus last week. They have been critical of us. over the last few years of saying we're not doing as good a job as we need to be in preparing welders. So we listened to them real carefully, and they came back to campus a couple of weeks ago, and guess what? They hired lots of folks out of our welding program. But as I was having the conversation with them, I said, tell me how many welders can you hire today? And he said, I can hire 50 welders today. And I said, now you're not just pulling my leg, that's really the truth. If I showed up with 50 students who were prepared like you want them, you would hire them on the spot? And he said, yes, we would. So those are the jobs that are out there for people. We had an interesting conversation at my table in the back. A challenge, and I hope that it's one that Randy and his group at the State Chamber are taking up, is that few people know about them. They just simply don't know that these jobs exist, because we spend a lot of time, again, pushing four-year degree programs, and some of the critical pieces we need plumbers, we need HVAC people, we need welders, we need people to drive big trucks and fix big trucks. We need people to fix your lawnmowers and your weed eaters. And those jobs are very good jobs anywhere you go. You can take that skill with you. It's mobile. And they earn a decent living in Arkansas. They supply a good income and a good quality of life for families. And while I know that there are a lot of other opportunities out there, those are the ones that we're choosing to focus on right now at Pulaski Tech in terms of trying to encourage people to consider going into those fields. And it is very difficult, because we do have a society that tends to feel as though those positions are less than in some kind of way, and there's just a lot of information that we need to get into the hands of parents and into the hands of students and families in order to say that all work is honorable and there are lots and lots of opportunities out there for you.
Warwick?
Yeah. I wanted to add something to that, because everything that was just said is absolutely true, and those are jobs that are critical, and we need to fill gaps. But I think our strategy cannot be exclusively in one direction or the other. I think you can do multiple things at the same time. And I think one of the weaknesses that we've had in Arkansas, just in general over the last few decades, is we tend to respond to the latest trend of 20 years ago. And the welding, the shortage of people who are skilled in welding, for instance, that's not exclusive to Arkansas. That exists in other states around the country. And what we really need to be doing, as we address that in all of the ways that you put it, we need to be looking to the future, because these exact jobs that we're talking about, they are going to evolve to the point where if you are an electrician, or you are an HVAC technician, or if you are an auto mechanic, you're going to need to understand how computer coding and programming works, because your house will soon be running on this, and your electrician will need to program your house and understand how to get into the binary code in whatever it is that's operating your electricity, or in your upcoming electric car, or in any of those situations. So mechanics and the technical fields are going to evolve into computer coding and programming. So in addition to everything that's been said, we need to, again, anticipate that and prepare people for those jobs, because we could end up in the same situation we often end up in, where we've prepared people for the jobs that existed 10 years ago instead of for the ones that are going to exist 10 years from now.
Randy?
Let me add just a couple of thoughts to that. First of all, amen to all the remarks of both Mary Ann and Warwick. They're absolutely on track. We have a great tendency in Arkansas to find something that works, and as soon as we discover it works, we stop doing it. We always want to go on to the next thing rather than sticking to many of the proven basics. And that's what gets us into a lot of these opportunities, I guess you might call them. School counselors used to work. That was such a good idea, we turned them into something else. Hence, we need razor coaches and career coaches. Pardon the French, but what the hell are the counselors doing? Testing and doing all kinds of other things. They're doing everything but counseling. So it's clear that there's profound need for doing that and restoring that activity within the high schools and even into the to your colleges to help kids realize what opportunities are available and what the future will look like for those opportunities. How many of you, right, show of hands, how many of you, especially those who are parents, how many of you would be pleased to go to the next cocktail party or gathering, social gathering, and brag about your son who's just enrolled in the welding program at Pulaski Tech? Anybody? A couple or three? Well, let me help you with that. After a couple of 3 years of good, solid work experience, that person would probably be making $150,000 a year. And that's not unusual. That's not exceptional. That's the norm for that sort of skill. And as Mary Ann said, it extends across a whole range of fields. We will not ever get away from making things, building things, and keeping things running, despite all the electronics involved. And yes, we're going to go there. We are there now. We're not going to go there. We're there now. If you think an engineer working on at Molex, for instance, is not neck deep in all kinds of sophisticated technologies, you really ought to spend a day or two in a modern, up-to-date, current manufacturing plant. Nobody is breaking a sweat. I can just tell you that. Everybody is capitalized to an enormous extent with sophisticated equipment and sophisticated processes. Go to the Caterpillar plant across the river. It's really something to behold. So there are these huge opportunities. They're gonna be there. They're gonna look different. They're gonna evolve. They're always evolving, and we have to be careful that we don't start working on just stuff that was in demand 5 years ago, as Warwick said, or 20 years ago, even worse. We've got to make sure that we're current, but we've got to make sure that we give kids a full understanding of the opportunities in front of them. There's nothing more cynical than persuading somebody to go bite off $30,000 or $40,000 worth of student debt to get a degree for which there is no demand when they complete that 4-year program. And they walk out of school, I'm bad to name certain degrees in this setting, so I'm going to avoid that temptation today. But there's nothing more cynical than a system that puts people in that position and then suddenly they're flipping burgers or waiting tables or tending bar in order to try to cover the payments on a $30,000 or $40,000 mortgage resulting from student loan debt. This is not the road to fame and fortune.
Well, that question kind of stirred up a little bit of interest in our panelists. Let's look at the next question. Question 2? Okay. We got about 5 minutes left. Panelists, just keep that in mind. What suggestions do you have for our high schools with larger populations versus our rural high schools in terms of preparing students for college and careers?
I'd be real quick. Mary Ann hit on a couple of subjects in there in her remarks earlier. Doesn't matter rural or urban, big school, little school. Work ethic, ability to learn, basic skills like reading, reasonable math, ability to locate information, understanding that when you take a job, it means show up on time every day, ready to work, ready to be reasonably productive. Those are the things that are, and of course, drug-free. Those are the things that are the most profound deficiencies in our workforce today, regardless of what degree you have, regardless of what job you're trying to do, period.
I would agree with what Randy said. I would also include things that some of our earlier speakers talked about in terms of establishing strong partnerships with colleges and high schools. We have a great partnership right now with the Little Rock School District that we hope to scale up to their school districts as well, in which we are especially looking at how to align our technical programs with the technical programs in the high schools and the Little Rock School District so that students can come to Pulaski Tech with college credit. But all of the comments that were made earlier about somehow many of us in the room, we just sort of intuitively figured out, or maybe we just wandered through and were lucky, how to navigate college. But we see at Pulaski Tech lots and lots of people come to college that really don't understand college. And if there's any way that you can get students on college campuses or into college seminar type classes that help them understand what college is, I found that pretty profound myself coming into this role, that we have numbers of people that just don't understand what they're getting into when they go to college. And again, many of us just somehow figured that out for ourselves.
And again, I agree with everything that's already been said, and I'll just add that, you know, in Arkansas, we often make too many distinctions within and among ourselves. I think, you know, whether it's central versus northwest, or between cities, or between counties, or rural versus urban, the truth is we're a state of 3 million people, which is smaller than most metropolitan areas around the country, and we're competing on that landscape. And so we need to find the commonalities rather than the differences. And I think a troubled school in a rural area is usually troubled for the same reason a troubled school in an urban area is troubled. And a good school in an urban area is usually good for the same reasons that a good school in a rural area is good. It's teacher involvement, parent involvement, the resources that are available, and then again, you know, making connections and partnerships among the resources that exist in that community, among whatever local institution of higher education exists, what local corporations and other workforce opportunities are there, and responding to those needs in the local community. But once again, understanding that every student is an Arkansas student and has opportunities that exist in this state, and every student is an American student that has opportunities beyond our borders. And we really need to be thinking broadly about those opportunities, exposing our students to what those opportunities are, preparing them, training them for those opportunities, and that is not a strategy that has any particular sort of exclusivity, whether you're in an urban or rural environment.
Our timekeeper has indicated we've just about run out of time. I do want to introduce State Senator Joyce Elliott, if you don't mind standing. I think she's joined us back there. Welcome. We're happy to see you today. I would want to make one comment also. This is the President Clinton Center. I never thought, as a young man growing up in Arkansas, I spent most of my life here, that we would ever have a president. And that has been something, I think, that if you could share with your students how important and how unique that particular event in this place and all that it represents means to the people of Arkansas as we try to address these kinds of issues. Randy said he's in that last category. A sociology friend of mine told me the other day, he said, Reed, at your age, you're in the old group. You're not in the old group, which is younger. You're not in the triple old group, but you're in the old group. Isn't that a wonderful way to say something to one of your friends? You're in the old category. I just want to make one final comment, and that is that we had a little tagline when I was Dean of the College of Education and Health Professions at the University of Arkansas. And I thought it was particularly important for the work we do as educators and as people trying to build a better state and a better country. And you have to remember that you all touch the lives of people every day in the work that you do. You don't miss a day of having the potential and probably the reality of touching someone's life in a very meaningful way. And I'd just like for you to keep that in mind. We're all good friends up here. We don't really agree nearly like we pretended to today on a lot of issues, but we are collegial in our disagreements. And again, it's time for lunch or a break. Who am I turning this over to when we finish? Jennifer? Okay. Going to take a question from Jerry Giss over here, who's done yeoman's work in terms of superintendency in several places in the state of Arkansas. Jerry?
This is my 16th year as a superintendent. 13 came 3 years last time. I can tell you that all of it has really been a privilege. I've sat here and talked and listened to all that you've had to say, and I've just made notes. I've thought about the new student evaluation programs in the course of benchmarks that are in place, the new teacher evaluation system. Mr. Zook, the Arkansas Scholars Program is what you identified a while ago, the characteristics that you look for. The area career centers that we have around Arkansas that do such a great job of educating kids for careers. The CTE programs in all of our high schools and all of the courses that we promote to give kids a chance to be a skilled craftsman when they graduate. The career coaches that we have in a lot of our schools that have been mentioned and are desperately needed. The duties that the traditional coaches do, Mr. Zook, you're exactly right. The traditional coaches are valuable. They should be working with kids to help them prepare, but they're inundated with a lot of these other things that I've just talked about. The use of instructional facilitators in our buildings, the use of formative assessments in our buildings, the CPEP program, the ACT prep program, the SAT prep program, all of the extracurricular programs that we do. I am an unabashed supporter of public education. I have my English teacher's picture in my pocket. That is proof that pictures last 50 years. Because she helped me see a course that's critical. I see public education as producing great results. I am the fortunate helper of a young man who will, on the second day of July, be inducted into the 2018 class at West Point. He lives with me. He is a product of public education. At the same time, we've talked about the deficiencies and the shortcomings. How do you explain that the systems must be in place in public education? The people that are there do great work, the teachers, the administrators, the support staff. And at the same time, public education is too often pointed to as the reason for high remediation rates, or the reason for a lack of skilled workforce, or the reason for the state not having a higher number of college-educated people. I believe public education has the systems in place to prove its worth. How do you explain then that there are systems in place that obviously produce those results? At the same time, a large number of our kids aren't succeeding. And what is deficient and how do we fix it?
Is that to me?
You want to answer it? You want to answer it?
I'm happy to tackle it, and then Mary Ann can clean me up, I guess. It's a profound question, and look, I share your enthusiasm. I'm a public school guy. Right now, I'm involved with a public charter school, KIPP, in Helena, West Helena, and Blytheville. All my children graduated from public school. My grandchildren are all in public school, except for 2 in Atlanta who are in private school. And I look at the rigor of the academic program that those 2 in a top-notch private school in Helena are getting, and the rigor of what my 3 that are in public schools in Arkansas are getting, and there is a profound difference. I'm sorry, but there is. I look at the rigor of the curriculum and the efforts at the KIPP school in Helena, West Helena, and I look at the results and the rigor of the academic distress school in public school. There is a profound difference. I don't know what the systemic failures are. I'm as frustrated, maybe more than everybody else in the room, because I've watched it, you know. But the business community that I represent and advocate for, the business community can only say what presents in our employment office. We can only assess what shows up. And people show up who cannot read, who carry a diploma from a certified high school in Arkansas. They cannot read a ruler, they cannot make simple mathematical calculations, and they can't look at a sheet of instructions and figure out what it says for the life of them. I don't know why that's there. All I know is it's a fact of life. Don't even talk about drugs. That's a whole different sociological issue. And the family, that's a totally different thing. All I can tell you is what's showing up in the workplace today is alarming. It's not just deficient, it's scary. I can give you the world's largest manufacturer or provider of protein had 90 openings in a reasonable geographical area recently, ran ads, radio spots, everything. 12 people showed up. Of the 12, 3 passed the drug test. 2 took the job that was offered to them. Neither one of them could read the instruction sheets. And one of them didn't show up the second day. All I'm telling you, I don't know where all that fits with K-12, but I can tell you this. One thing I would advocate for is if a kid shows up at a post-secondary institution, having graduated from a high school and has to be remediated, I think the K-12 system ought to be sent the bill. Otherwise, they shouldn't have gotten a diploma. When will a diploma mean something again? Rather than just you showed up, you fogged a mirror several days a week, and you sat in the seat. Now, sure, there are brilliant, wonderful people in the top 20% of every graduating class in Arkansas, but there's a big number that don't clear that threshold. And that's what we're dealing with more often than not. Now, end of sermon.
Yeah.
In the spirit it was intended, I'm sure.
We're going to have enough time for our other two panelists to respond? Yeah, please.
I too am at a loss for words, but I want to highlight one thing that may contribute to that and could be the disconnect that we still have between our education systems. The elementary, the middle school, the high school, to 4-year, to the world of work. We still have some disconnects in there. And you can read articles all day long that talk about how our system of education in this country was designed back in the 20s, you know, in parallel scientific manufacturing, you know, as raw materials go in and you work on them a little bit at a time until they come out the other end. But I don't know that anybody has a real clear idea if we were to dismantle that system, what we would put in place either. But I want to highlight a partnership that we have at the college that I think is helping us, and it's a partnership that's coming through the school districts, through us, and then on into UALR, and we have all of those folks at the table trying to plan a course of instruction so that students can move through the school district into high school, into our college, and then into UALR if they want to. And we don't always have all the same people in the room talking about those programs. And by the way, I forgot to mention employers are in the room as well. So that could be a strategy that we could adopt more than we currently do, is to make sure that we have all the right people in the room. And the program I'm talking about right now is our culinary program at Pulaski Tech, which is, I believe, state-of-the-art, second to none in the country. And we're going to be able to make opportunities available all through the school district and into UALR as well for people who are interested, and employers are very excited about that.
I'll keep my comments brief, but you know, a long time ago I attended a symposium on education in New Orleans, and one of the presenters started his presentation by putting 2 photographs next to one another, and they were both of school classrooms, and they looked almost identical. And his point was that, you know, one of the photos was taken, I think, in the first decade of the 20th century, and one photo was taken in the first decade of the 21st century, and nothing's really changed about the classroom since then. And I know you couldn't probably say that about somebody's office space or somebody's home. We've evolved a lot in 100 years, except maybe in the way that we teach. And I think that, you know, now that we have, I can just 2 examples in the room right here. We have Senator Elliott, who put forward legislation to allow public schools to apply to be schools of innovation, which has really allowed for some creativity and some flexibility to be applied to the education model here in Arkansas. And again, we have the East Initiative, which has injected a lot of real, again, creative, out-of-the-box thinking when it comes to teaching those skills that are probably most important as we prepare students for the jobs that are going to exist in the century going forward. So I think, you know, the question, if the question is why is the model broken, and if I could answer that, then I would probably be somewhere else making a whole lot of money. But I know that if the model is broken, let's find another model and let's encourage the kind of efforts that the East Initiative and that Senator Elliott has put forward, and let's see more schools in Arkansas applying to be schools of innovation. Let's see more flexibility given, within the schools themselves, within the school districts themselves, and within this framework that we've put forward in state government to administer our education system here. I think that's where we need to direct all of our efforts towards innovation and creativity.
What, the moderator gets the last word here, okay? I think we have to recognize that what you've articulated are our problems, not just your problems, that they belong to all of us, and we have to pitch in and make that happen. We can't brag too much in higher education. If we only get 60% of our students that come to us as freshmen with the high marks that we have on our campus at the University of Arkansas, we have a very low remediation rate. So we can't say to the high schools, it's your fault. Because we're getting kids that are well prepared for college. But we only get 60% of them through to graduation in 6 years. Y'all are doing a little bit better than that, I think, in terms of high school. So there are things that all of us have to come together and work on the problems, I think. But we need to have this kind of dialogue to be able to make progress. And the folks here that are looking at me saying, you need to wrap it up. Thank you all very much. We appreciate it. Thanks to our panelists. These folks, I know, would be happy to interact with you about any of these issues at any time, particularly Randy. He gets real passionate about that. By the way, if you want to have an influence on the State Board of Education, Randy's wife is one of the new appointees to that, so he can really have a pillow talk there and get this squared away. Thanks again.
Thanks to everyone on the panel. And during the last panel, we have a really nice segue between the conversation and our keynote speaker. And this is our final keynote speaker. And the conversation revolves around a disconnect between business and K-12, perhaps. And this is a